Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm Cassidy Carson, and this is The Life of a Writer. As I record this, today is Sunday, February 8th, 2026. It is Super Bowl day. We have the Seahawks and the Patriots facing off. The halftime performer is Bad Bunny, and of course, there will be the usual Super Bowl commercials. So, JT and I will be watching, and as we watch, I will be revising book 2 of my Restless Spirit series because I don't really care about the game, but we just like to hang out, and it's become a bit of a tradition. When we were first married, I think it may have been the first year we were married, we actually went to a Super Bowl party at someone's house, and I remember the Dolphins were playing that year. I don't remember the other team. I think we may have been rooting for the Dolphins at that time. Not because we're really football fans, but just because it was something to do. And maybe everybody else was also rooting for the Dolphins, which would have been interesting because we were in Nebraska, but that's probably a story for another time. You see that I'm wearing a lot of Cubs themed items right now because, as JT was saying during our podcast this morning, the end of football season leads into the beginning of baseball season. Pitchers and catchers should be reporting very soon, and spring training will be starting up here just a few weeks from now, I think. So we're much bigger baseball fans than we are football fans, but it's definitely just something to do to mark the passage of time. I think that's part of the ritual, is that it happens this time each year, and it's such a big national cultural event that we just like to participate. So I mainly watch it for the commercials because there have been some good ones. The Budweiser Clydesdales are usually my favorites, and also if it's a Coca-Cola themed thing or something. And I know brands are problematic. They keep coming and going and getting themselves into hot water based on their beliefs and practices. But I have been a Coca-Cola fan for a very long time. I started collecting in the 1970s, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit in a future video. But at this point, since I've been collecting for a while, I'm not canceling Coca-Cola. I love Coke much more than I do Pepsi. Even though I don't drink a ton of soda anymore, I still do have my caffeine-free Diet Coke on occasion because caffeine is not agreeing with me lately. And I did have a little bit of coffee this morning, so I'm a little buzzed because we always have our Jack in the Box coffee when we have our podcasts on Sunday mornings. So also, I should say that this is not sponsored in any way by anybody I mention. It's just my personal experience. So there are no sponsorships. I am not monetized or anything. I'm not even close to being monetized. I have 20 something followers at this point, and it would be easy. My mind. Sorry, I had a bad night, which will be the topic of discussion here in a minute. It would be interesting to kind of mention every once in a while if I'm gaining followers or not, because as I've said, I am posting a video every day this year. That's my intention anyway. And I have picked up a few new followers, so thank you everybody who's come and joined the channel. I appreciate that. I love if somebody leaves a comment because I've had a couple of really good interactions already, and trying to build a community. Also, like I've said before, just trying to track what I'm doing because it's so easy to lose sight over time of what happened on a particular day. So that's why I gave you a little bit of background on the Super Bowl today, because that's what's happening February 8th, 2026. And now I think we'll get into the subject matter of this video today, which is feelings. The reason I bring up feelings right now is that I've also probably mentioned multiple times, I'm 62 years old. I'm in my 60s, and I am feeling a lot of things in my body that I'm not remembering feeling in the past. Now, at this point in time, I'm very postmenopausal. It's been more than a decade, and I'm not going to go too deeply into the details of any of that because this is not a health themed channel at all. It is more writer themed, and that will come into play here in a minute. But I am becoming more aware of the aches and pains in my body than I perhaps was when I was younger. I do remember distinctly in my 20s and 30s, at that time, everything was so dramatic because my emotions were such a roller coaster. I may have been dealing with hormonal issues that I did not understand because I grew up in a family where my grandmother famously um, actually fell and broke her arm at one point. Her dog had been chained up outside and ran under her feet and knocked her over. And she broke her arm, didn't realize it, walked around with a broken arm for several days. Finally, it swelled up and became black and blue, and she ended up going to the doctor. So I also believe she had most, if not all, of her kids at home. Not really a fan of going to get a lot of medical intervention. And I don't know if that was like a pioneering thing. I don't know if it was a frugality thing because my grandparents were adults during the Great Depression. They were both born in 1906, and they definitely were frugal people. There were always family legends about them having money. Not that it mattered one way or another, but I had quite a few cousins, and we would chat about, family stuff just because it was interesting to try to figure out what was going on with the grown-ups because they didn't talk to us that much. And we weren't really encouraged to express our feelings very often, so I've suppressed mine a lot over the years. And after my mother passed away, I had a bit of an emotional breakdown around my kids, and I can't remember, grief is strange. Something really random set me off. And my kids made the comment that they don't remember ever seeing me cry. And I found that strange because as I was raising them, I felt like I cried all the time. But I also recall I would spend a lot of time crying in the shower and things like that. And I was brought up with the belief that adults were capable, kind of all-knowing creatures, that adults were adults and they knew what was going on in the world. And my grandparents and parents did not express a lot of emotions. So I think even though I tried to not repeat the mistakes I felt that my parents made raising me, I think maybe I unintentionally did repeat some of them because, like I said, my kids didn't remember me ever crying, even though I did quite a bit. I know JT would know for sure because I'm fairly positive I cried around him a lot. But I was trying to make the kids feel safe and maybe didn't really consider the fact that I should not be quite so stoic about everything. So in my 60s now, expressing emotion is a very different situation. As I said, I did break down around my kids after the passing of my mother, and it was, I guess, maybe a relief in some ways, even though I do think I still keep a lot from my kids because there is still that generational divide that I may have unintentionally internalized growing up. And I love my kids. I love spending time with them. I love hanging out with them. I love chatting with them. Love doing things with them. But I still feel like, I'm the parent, they're the kids, and we can only be close on some levels, that we're not friends, and it's complicated. Really, the reason I'm giving you all this background is because now I guess I'm trying to figure out how to feel my feelings, and part of how I'm doing that is through my writing. So Passion Restored over here, which I've mentioned a few times recently. Passion Restored, the main characters are a couple in their 50s. They are not directly based on JT and I because the main male character comes from a wealthy family. He's estranged from his family because he wants to try to break out on his own, and he's divorced. He's got a lot of challenges, and he's trying to figure himself out in his 50s. And I'm not quite sure why I set the ages of my characters a decade younger than I am, but maybe I was trying to, in some ways, explore how I felt a decade ago. Who knows? I just, for some reason, didn't feel like they should be my contemporaries. Now, on the other hand, the current book I'm working on, Restless Spirits Book 2, which I haven't yet released the title or cover. I don't have the cover yet, but I do have the title. I've had the title for a long time. The characters in that book are actually a decade older than I am, and they are long married, so that part of the book is pretty consistent with JT and I, because this couple is approaching their 50th wedding anniversary. JT and I will be celebrating 44 years this year. Good grief. So we're about a half a decade away from our golden anniversary, but it's a discussion of a long-term relationship. It is a romance, so they've gotten very comfortable with each other. JT and I have talked about this on our podcast, that couples have a language, they have a relationship, they have a culture, and this couple's culture maybe is a little out of whack. So they're kind of trying to find their way back to each other. In the meanwhile, all this paranormal stuff is happening around them, which does affect them directly. And in that way, it really has nothing to do with JT and I, because I've experienced things over the years that I don't quite understand or can't explain. I'm not sure how much I believe in the paranormal, but to be fair, paranormal, supernatural, that just means something outside of the normal, the middle of the road, something that would be natural or normal. It's just a little off kilter. And in my Restless Spirits series, that is the existence of spirit activity of those who have passed away. And as I mentioned in Passion Restored, the female main character has a very close relationship with her mother. Her father passed away when she was younger, whereas in my case, my mother passed away more than a decade ago now. I still have a father. We're not incredibly close, but again, it goes back to all that I mentioned about childhood. It's not really an estrangement, it's just the way our relationship developed. And I think I was trying to explore the idea of what it would be like if I actually had a close relationship with my mother. So in book 2, I'm exploring the feelings of the female main character, who's in her 70s. She is well past menopause. She's postmenopausal. But I've noticed at my age that that's not necessarily just a smooth sailing. I always assumed that older women had very mellow, emotional lives. And, physically, I understood that our bodies are going to feel a lot as we get older, because it's just, even in our late 20s, early 30s, we really start to feel the effects of aging. Because I know I had 3 kids in my 20s. By the time I was in my early 30s, my body was feeling it, and I had some health issues. I had some very serious health issues for a brief time. And I am currently on maintenance medications for things that were found in my early 30s because of those health issues. And the health part of it is not really the point of this discussion. The point is that over time, really, I think as our bodies start to wear down, we start feeling things a lot more, unless there is an emotional detachment, which I think can also be the case in my case. And the reason I'm bringing this up today is because I had a really crummy night, and my early menopausal period was pretty smooth. I did not feel a lot of the hot flashes and things like that more than a decade later I have started experiencing. It actually started out with cold flashes, which I didn't even know was a thing until I experienced them, and not a pleasant experience, believe me. It felt like being dunked in a tank of ice water. That seems to have swung to hot flashes with, not only the hot flashes, it's like a lot of tingling and racing heart. And for a while, I thought I was having panic attacks, but I'm coming to see that it was probably hot flashes. And as I experience more of them, they're not, since I had no idea what was happening with me, I was panicking, which was only making things worse. So as I've become more familiar with the sensations and with the feelings going on in my body, I'm able to regulate them a little better, because instead of panicking, last night, for example, when I had an issue, I felt it coming on. I just purposely calmed down, started taking some deep breaths, reminded myself that it would pass, and got through it a lot more easily than I might have in the past. So understanding feelings can be very important for physical and emotional health. And that's why I am exploring feelings in my books, because I feel like, there I'm using the word feel, I'm starting to understand that maybe I didn't have the emotional education I needed as I was growing up. Now, not to say that I blame my grandparents or parents or anything for how I was raised, because I understand how complicated it is to raise kids, having done so myself now, and watching my kids raise their kids is an eye-opening experience, because they are also going through I don't want to make all the mistakes my parents made. And in the meantime, I'm seeing how the results of how that's working out, because their kids are a teen and a preteen right now, and that's a very emotional period for human development. So you have the parents who are going through their own physical and emotional issues, dealing with kids who are going through physical and emotional issues, and the complex results of that are fascinating to watch as an observer. Whereas trying to live through them was just surviving the day, basically, because there are really a lot of periods of time that I don't remember as my kids were growing up. Obviously, there were the highlights, school events and holidays and things like that, but the day-to-day, probably some of the more dramatic emotional days, I may have just blocked out because I was trying to just survive them. And all of this has been going through my head as I've been writing, which makes the writing process a little complicated, I think. We want our books to have an emotional weight to them. We want them to be relatable to people on an emotional level, because there's nothing better or more cathartic than reading a book that makes you laugh or makes you cry. Obviously, with my paranormal romances, for the most part, they're going to be the heavier emotions of fear and dread and sadness, things like that. So getting the characters to experience things that I either don't remember experiencing, or that I did not experience in a particular way, is an interesting challenge. And I'm not sure how well I did with Passion Restored. I feel like, in my opinion, the book may be a little less emotional than I had hoped. The romantic elements might have been a little bit diluted based on the more supernatural elements that were happening. And since the book is already out, I'm not going to spoil it. But part of the issue with the couple is they weren't looking for a relationship when they met. Not to say they weren't open to it, they just weren't looking for it. And the series of events that happen around them make them question whether or not their emotional attachment is real. And I think that could be something that people can relate to. I think anybody in any type of relationship often wonders, why am I attracted to this particular person? Is it something real, or are there outside elements that are driving me into this person's arms? So that was what I was exploring in that book, along with Angela, the main character's relationship with her mother. Because romantic relationships don't happen in a vacuum. There's a lot of external stimulus, either pushing the couple together or pulling them apart. Now, in the next book, book 2 of Restless Spirits, the couple, like I said, is long married. They've raised their children. They have adult grandchildren. They're headed toward their 50th anniversary. The main female character is dealing with these feelings that she doesn't think she should be experiencing at her age. And she's trying to decide if they're normal feelings. And then she's wondering how much of it might be related to recent changes in her health or a recent medical event, which I won't detail too much, but also whether or not the supernatural events happening in the book are exacerbating something that's going on with her. So I'm trying to deal with very complicated emotions and relationships, and I don't know how well I'm getting that across in my books, because in the writing process, we spend so much time trying to get the words down that I don't know that I'm always choosing the right words. I don't know that I'm, appealing to the right parts of the reader's psyche. I did get my beta notes back, for Restless Spirits Book 2. And I haven't gone through all of them just yet, but I do note at one point one of the beta readers mentioned that something was very scary. So that makes me feel good, because I was trying to make it a little bit more frightening than maybe I thought the first book turned out. But it's hard to determine whether what's frightening to me might be frightening to the reader. So I have a lot of complicated things going on in my head right now, even though when I'm sitting down at the keyboard, it feels like my head's kind of an empty void, which is a great thing to hear a writer say, right? And I'm sure if you are a fellow writer watching this, you understand completely where I'm coming from, because no matter what you're writing, you want to spark an emotional response in some way. And it doesn't matter whether it's fiction, nonfiction, poetry. You definitely want to connect to your reader on some level, and the best way to do that is emotionally. So, feelings. Feeling all the feelings. Feeling all the feelings after having a bad night. It's challenging. And if you're watching this video, I would be interested to know, when you are reading a book, do you prefer something that sparks a lot of positive emotions in you, of feeling that, oh, this is so wonderful that this couple has gotten together, I enjoy the humor, that type of thing? Or do you like to experience the darker emotions, because maybe your life has been pretty calm and consistent? And if it has been, kudos to you, because life can be a real challenge. So those darker emotions, the negative ones, maybe not negative, but the darker emotions, are those more appealing to you? Because I completely understand a lot of people enjoy dark fiction, dark fantasy, dark romance, because I think sometimes we like to explore the darker side of humanity. And another comment I got from one of my betas was that maybe my characters got along a little bit too well. And that's problematic because I know we need drama to make a story interesting to readers. However, on a personal level, I don't enjoy drama. And I think it's to the point where I actively try to avoid drama as much as possible because it makes me so anxious. And I understand this about myself. So I may subconsciously be avoiding drama in my books because maybe writing it makes me anxious as well. I haven't really delved too deeply into that thought process, but I understand that most readers are going to want at least a little bit of drama. There's got to be some conflict in order to have a story arc, because your character has to go through something and evolve to an end point. For example, I'll talk about JT's Tucci Chronicles, Love and Death on I-80 West and Starting Over in Las Vegas. Tucci is a dark person. And when JT wrote the books, when I first read them, I was definitely wondering about my husband, because I was wondering where all these really deep, dark thoughts had come from, because some of the things that he wrote about, I never even really occurred to me. So I understand that he was definitely trying to spark not only a visceral emotional response, but he was trying to give Tucci a really good, strong character arc. He starts out as a really rough person and is somewhat redeemed by the power of love. Now, whether or not the reader will think he's actually redeemed, or he might backslide into his former ways, I think that's up to the reader. And I do know that people enjoy those kinds of characters because Hannibal Lecter is very popular, Dexter is very popular. Those types of shows tend to really draw a large audience of people who may be trying to explore the darker human emotions without actually having to give into them for themselves. So feelings are very important to writing. Feelings are very important to life. I don't know that we can ever truly understand our own feelings or those of others. Each of us can have a very mellow public face, and I think we're seeing that problem in society right now, that a lot of people have been pushing down negative emotions and they're all bubbling to the surface. There's a certain subset of the population that maybe has more intense, dark emotions that are coming out now that they've been trying to suppress for years just to fit in and go with the flow. And it's challenging to figure out not only how to express them, but how to handle people who maybe express them too much and don't know how to handle them. So that is my complex and convoluted discussion about feelings based on the fact that I had a rough night. I'm feeling a little numb today, actually. Not physically, because more often than not, every day is a new ache and pain. I do remember distinctly yesterday feeling like, oh, I'm having a good day. I feel good. I need to take advantage of this. And I'm getting better about doing that in the moment. As I mentioned about my hot flash last night and how I was feeling so crummy, but I breathed through it and maybe didn't experience it quite as badly as I have in the past because of that. So I encourage you to explore your own feelings. I don't think suppressing feelings is necessarily healthy. We have to find not only healthy but reasonable outlets for our emotions. And I do think that reading and media of all types are an excellent way for people to deal with emotions that they may be feeling or that they may wonder about because they don't actively feel them on a daily basis. So it is probably a topic that we could talk more at length about. I am not a psychotherapist. I'm not versed in the human psyche. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, things that I, at this point in my life, have thought a lot about, things that I'm thinking a lot more about as I'm getting older. And I'm hoping that maybe some of what I'm saying will help you decide that maybe you need to take a moment, step back, and explore your own emotions, because we can't avoid them. Humans are emotional creatures. And just taking a brief dip into the AI discussion, I am not a proponent of AI for artistic works. Just put that right out there. But I think one of the bigger problems between AI and human created works is that the AI works don't have any emotion to them. That may not always be the case. We don't know how much AI will learn from what they're taking in. And a lot of science fiction has already dealt with that kind of issue. JT's Finding Salvation series actually has a little bit of discussion, I guess, about artificial intelligence and how the interaction between humans and maybe automatons, if you might call them that, how that works. And there are things like Blade Runner was a good example of dealing with that kind of discussion, because once an artificial entity has been created, does it take on a life of its own? I mean, what are the ethics of dealing with that? And that's a discussion for a whole different, I mean, I don't even know if I could get into that because it's so complicated. But my main point there is that I feel that human-generated works of art have more emotion than AI-generated works at this point in time. I don't encourage people to use AI, but I'm not going too much further down that road because it's such a volatile topic right now. And really, I've learned over time that I can't say that one thing is absolutely right or absolutely wrong, because there are always so many shades of gray. And that's really the emotional landscape. We can talk about good and bad, right and wrong, left and right, till we're blue in the face. But those shades of gray are what really make life both interesting and challenging. And I think that's a lot of what we're exploring in our writing. I know that's what I'm exploring in my writing right now. And I would encourage you to do a little examining of that for yourself. So I'd also be interested to know, if you do happen to read Passion Restored, do you feel I gave the story enough emotional depth? Be kind. You know, I have feelings. It hurts when I feel like maybe I've screwed something up, but I think it's a good story. I enjoy how it turned out, but I still have those niggling doubts every once in a while, and I'd just be interested to know what readers think. So thank you for joining me on this epic emotional discussion today about feelings, and not only learning and expressing our own feelings, but using our feelings in writing. If you do make it through my videos, I appreciate you. I know I can be a little much. I like to go off on tangents because there are so many things going through my mind at the same time. I'm trying to regulate them and become more linear. I don't know how successful I am. It's an evolution. I can't change overnight. But if you are joining me on this journey and you are hanging out while I have these random discussions about weird feelings and my upbringing, then I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the fact that you stopped by to say hello today. Thank you for joining me. I'm Cassidy Carson. And this is the Life of a Writer. See you tomorrow.